You open your inbox and there it is. 7 words. Maybe 10. The subject line alone is enough. Your chest tightens. Your throat closes. The air in the room changes. Or maybe it is just the air in your lungs. You have not even read the message yet, but your body already knows. It remembers. It prepares. Fight or flight. Freeze or collapse. Before your conscious mind can form a thought, the reaction is already moving through you like a current you cannot stop. Or maybe it is not an email. Maybe it is a comment. Something small, something that should not matter. But it lands in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time, and suddenly you are flooded. Anger rises like a wave you did not see coming. Your face burns, your hands shake. Words form on your tongue, sharp and ready, and you want to unleash them. You want to defend yourself, hurt back, make them understand. The feeling is so loud, so total, that for a moment you disappear inside it. Or maybe it is quieter than that. Maybe it is just a memory. You are driving, or folding laundry, or standing in line, and something reminds you. A song, a smell, the way the light falls through a window, and before you can stop it, you are pulled under. The past becomes present. The wound opens again, and you are no longer here. You are there, stuck, reliving, reacting to something that is not even happening anymore. This is the life most people live. A life of reaction. A life where emotions arrive uninvited and take over completely. Where triggers pull strings you did not know you had. Where you say things you do not mean, do things you regret, and spend hours afterward replaying the moment, wishing you could go back and choose differently. But you could not choose differently. Because in that moment, it did not feel like a choice. It felt like the only option, the only possible response. It felt like you, and maybe that is the most painful part. Not just that you reacted, but that you believed the reaction was you, that the anger was you, that the fear was you, that the shame, the defensiveness, the collapse, the explosion, all of it was simply who you are. Unchangeable, hardwired, beyond your control. You have tried to stop. You have told yourself 1,000 times, next time will be different. Next time I will stay calm. Next time I will not take it personally. Next time I will breathe, think, choose better. But next time comes, and the same thing happens. The same flood. The same loss of control. The same disappointment in yourself. And over time something hardens. You start to believe that this is just how you are. That you are too sensitive, too reactive, too broken. That other people have some kind of emotional composure you were never given. That they can handle criticism without crumbling. That they can navigate conflict without exploding. That they can sit with discomfort without needing to escape. But here is the truth, and it is both liberating and demanding. You are not your reactions. You are not the anger that overtakes you. You are not the fear that paralyzes you. You are not the shame that makes you want to disappear. Those are experiences moving through you. They are real, they are powerful, but they are not you. And between every trigger and every reaction, there is a space, a gap. It is small, often invisible, but it is there. And inside that gap lives your entire future. Most people never discover this gap. They live their whole lives as passengers to their emotions. Stimulus and response collapsed into a single automatic reaction. Something happens, and they respond. Instantly, unconsciously, inevitably. No pause, no choice, just reaction. But you are about to learn something different. something that changes everything. You are about to learn that the gap exists, that it can be found, that it can be widened, and that when you learn to live inside that gap, when you learn to create space between what happens to you and how you respond, you gain access to a kind of power most people never experience. This is not about suppressing your feelings. It is not about becoming cold or detached or pretending things do not hurt. It is not about spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity or any of the shallow strategies that tell you to just think happy thoughts and move on. This is about something much deeper, much more real. This is about mastering the moment between stimulus and response, about learning to feel everything without being controlled by anything, about becoming the author of your internal experience instead of a victim to it. Because here is what most people do not understand. Your emotions are information. They are signals. They are messengers bringing you news from your nervous system, your history, your unmet needs. But they are not orders. They do not get to decide what you do next. You decide. And when you learn to separate the feeling from the action, when you learn to hold space for the emotion without immediately obeying it, everything changes. Your relationships change. Your confidence changes. Your entire experience of being alive changes. The argument that used to end in slammed doors and words you cannot take back becomes a conversation. Difficult, yes. Uncomfortable, absolutely. But no longer destructive. Because you feel the heat rising and you pause. You recognize the impulse to attack and you choose something else. Not because you are weak, because you are strong enough to feel the anger without becoming it. The criticism that used to send you spiraling into shame and self-doubt becomes feedback. It still stings. It still hurts. But it does not define you. Because you notice the tightness in your chest, and you breathe. You hear the old story trying to take over. The one that says you are not good enough, that you never will be, and you recognize it as a story. Not truth. Just noise, and you let it pass. The fear that used to keep you small, that used to stop you from taking risks or speaking up or going after what you want, becomes something you can move with. It does not disappear, but it no longer gets to make your decisions, because you feel the anxiety rising and you name it. You acknowledge it, and then you act anyway. This is what sovereignty looks like. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of choice. Not control over what you feel, but control over what you do with what you feel. And it is possible. Not someday. Not after years of therapy or meditation or self-help books. It is possible now, starting now, with the very next trigger that comes your way. By the end of this journey, you will no longer be ambushed by your emotions. You will see them coming. You will meet them with awareness instead of fear. You will hold space for them without being consumed by them. You will become someone who feels deeply and responds wisely. Someone who is no longer ruled by impulse or old wounds or the tyranny of automatic reaction. You will become the calm at the center of the storm. Not because the storm stops coming, but because you learn to stand steady while it rages. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming free. Free from the prison of reactivity. Free from the exhausting cycle of regret and shame. Free to choose, in every moment, who you want to be and how you want to show up. The gap between stimulus and response is where your power lives. It is where your future is written. It is where transformation happens. And right now, in this moment, you are stepping into that gap. You are learning to live there. You are reclaiming the part of yourself that has always been there, waiting beneath the noise and the chaos and the automatic patterns. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were simply running on old programming, reacting from old wounds, operating on autopilot in a world that constantly pushes your buttons. But now you are waking up. Now you are learning. Now you are beginning to see that you are not your reactions. You are the space in which reactions occur. You are the awareness that notices them. You are the choice that follows. And that changes everything. That is the promise. That is the truth. That is where we are going. But first, you need to see how deep the prison goes. You need to understand what it costs to live as a reactor instead of a responder. Because until you see the full picture, until you feel the weight of what is being lost every time you hand control over to your emotions, change will remain an idea instead of an imperative. Let us start somewhere familiar. Somewhere small, your partner asks a simple question. Did you finish that thing you said you would do? That is all. 7 words. No aggression, no accusation, just a question. But the way they say it, or maybe just the fact that they are asking at all, hits something inside you. Your jaw tightens, your shoulders rise. Before you even know what is happening, you hear yourself snap back. I said, I would do it, didn't I? Why do you always have to check up on me? The moment the words leave your mouth, you know they did not deserve that. You know the question was not an attack, but the reaction was already in motion before your rational mind could intervene. And now the air between you is thick. Their face changes. They pull back. Maybe they respond. Maybe they go quiet. But either way, the damage is done. A simple moment became a wound because you could not find the gap between their words and your response. Later you will apologize. You will explain that you were stressed, that you did not mean it, that you are sorry. And maybe they will forgive you. But something accumulates. A small deposit of mistrust, a tiny question that forms in their mind. Can I ask you things without you reacting? And in your own mind, another layer of shame. Why do I keep doing this? Or maybe it happens at work. Your coworker sends a message. Their tone feels curt, cold. Maybe it is just efficient. Maybe they are busy. Maybe it means nothing at all. But you read it and something inside you shifts. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts spiral. What did I do wrong? Are they angry with me? Do they think I am incompetent? The rest of your day is colored by this feeling. You cannot focus. You replay the message over and over, searching for hidden meaning, building a story that may have no connection to reality. You avoid them. You second-guess yourself. You send a follow-up message that is too apologetic, too eager, trying to fix a problem that might not exist. And now you are exhausted. A single ambiguous sentence derailed your entire day. Not because of what they said, but because of how you reacted to what you thought they meant. Or maybe it is quieter, more internal. You have an opportunity in front of you, a chance to speak up in a meeting, to apply for the position, to share your work, to take the risk. You know you should. You have prepared. You are capable. But when the moment comes, fear floods your system. Your heart races. Your mind goes blank. Your body feels heavy, frozen. The window closes. The opportunity passes. And you are left with the familiar ache of regret. You tell yourself next time will be different. But next time comes and the same thing happens. The same paralysis, the same fear, the same choice to stay small, stay safe, stay silent. And slowly, over months and years, You stop putting yourself in positions where the fear might show up. You stop reaching. You stop risking. You build a smaller life because it is the only life where you feel like you can manage your reactions. This is the prison of automatic reaction. It is not dramatic. It is not a single catastrophic event. It is 1,000 small moments where you lose control, where your emotions make decisions for you, where you become a passenger in your own life. And the pattern is always the same. Trigger, hijack, regret, shame, repeat. Something happens. Your nervous system reacts. Your emotions flood. You say or do something you wish you had not. You feel terrible about it afterward. You promise yourself it will not happen again. And then it does. The cycle is exhausting. It erodes your trust in yourself. Because how can you trust yourself when you do not know which version of you will show up? The calm, reasonable version, or the reactive, defensive, fearful version? It is like living with a stranger inside your own skin. You never know when they will take over. And it damages your relationships, because people stop feeling safe around you. They start to edit themselves, to walk on eggshells, to avoid certain topics or tones or questions because they do not want to trigger the reaction. Or they stop trying altogether. They distance themselves. They find people who are easier to be around, and you are left wondering why connection feels so hard, why intimacy feels so fragile, not realizing that your reactivity is the wall keeping people out. But here is what makes it so difficult to break. The reaction does not feel like a choice. It feels like the truth. It feels like the only possible response to what just happened. When your partner asks that question, it does not feel like you are choosing to be defensive. It feels like they are attacking you, and you are protecting yourself. When your coworker sends that message, it does not feel like you are choosing to spiral. It feels like they are upset with you, and you are responding to a real threat. When fear paralyzes you, it does not feel like you are choosing to stay small. It feels like you are being realistic, being safe, protecting yourself from inevitable failure or rejection. The emotions are so loud, so immediate, so total, that they drown out everything else. There is no gap, no pause, no moment of awareness where you can step back and see what is actually happening. There is only the feeling, and the feeling becomes the action, and your body moves faster than your mind. That is the most disorienting part. The heat rises in your face before you notice you are angry. The tightness grips your throat before you realize you are hurt. Your fists clench, your voice rises, your eyes well up, your legs carry you out of the room. All of it happens before you consciously decide to do any of it. Your body is already in motion, already reacting, already protecting or attacking or fleeing, and your mind is just trying to catch up, trying to make sense of what is happening, trying to justify what you are already doing. This is not weakness. This is not a character flaw. This is biology. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, keep you alive. The problem is, it was designed for a different world. A world where threats were immediate and physical. A world where hesitation could get you killed. A world where reacting fast was more important than reacting right. But you do not live in that world anymore. The threats you face now are not lions or rival tribes. They are emails and comments and questions and opportunities, and your nervous system cannot tell the difference. It treats a critical tone the same way it would treat a predator. It floods your body with the same chemicals, activates the same ancient responses, hijacks your rational mind the same way. So you react, instantly, automatically, the way your ancestors did when survival depended on speed. But now, instead of saving your life, it is ruining your day, ruining your relationships, ruining your peace, and the reactions compound. One bad morning becomes a bad week. You snap at your partner, and the tension lingers. You bring that tension to work. You are short with a colleague. They respond coolly. You interpret their coolness as rejection. You withdraw. You feel isolated. You come home feeling worse. You snap again. The cycle deepens. One moment of anger becomes a reputation. People start to see you as reactive, difficult, someone who cannot handle feedback or stress. And once that label forms, it is hard to shake. Because now every reaction reinforces it. Now people expect it. And in some strange way, you start to expect it from yourself. You start to believe that this is just who you are. One instance of fear becomes a life unlived. You do not speak up once, and it becomes easier not to speak up the next time. You avoid risk once, and avoidance becomes your default. You say no to one opportunity, and suddenly you are saying no to all of them. The pattern solidifies. The walls close in, and years pass where you do not take chances, do not share your voice, do not reach for what you actually want, because somewhere along the way, fear convinced you that staying small is the same as staying safe. This is the cost. This is what automatic reaction steals from you. Not just moments, but momentum. Not just conversations, but connections. Not just comfort, but possibility. It keeps you locked in loops you swore you would break. It makes you a stranger to yourself. It turns your emotions into tyrants and your life into something smaller than it was meant to be. And the shame is relentless. Because you know better, you can see what is happening. After the fact, you can see it so clearly. You can see that they were not attacking you, that the message was not personal, that the fear was not proportional to the risk. But in the moment, you could not see any of that. In the moment, you were blind. And that is terrifying, to know that at any second you could be hijacked again, that at any second you could lose access to your own wisdom, your own values, your own best self. So you live in a state of low-level anxiety, waiting for the next trigger, bracing for the next reaction, trying to control the external world so you do not have to face what is happening in your internal world. And it is exhausting. It is unsustainable. And deep down, you know something has to change. The pain is real. The consequences are real. The urgency is real. You cannot keep living like this. You cannot keep losing yourself every time something difficult happens. You cannot keep burning bridges, sabotaging opportunities, and betraying your own values, because your nervous system is running a program written for a world that no longer exists. But here is the important part. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not beyond help. You are simply operating on autopilot, running ancient wiring in a modern context. And just like any program, it can be updated. Any pattern can be interrupted. Any reaction can be met with awareness instead of obedience. You just need to learn how. And that is exactly what comes next. To understand how to change, you first need to understand why you react the way you do. Because this is not about willpower. It is not about trying harder or being stronger. It is about understanding the machinery that runs beneath your conscious awareness. Once you see how the system works, you stop blaming yourself and start working with your biology instead of against it. Deep inside your brain, nestled in the temporal lobe, sits a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It is ancient, primitive, and it has one job: keep you alive, not happy, not fulfilled, not emotionally regulated, just alive. The amygdala is your alarm system. It scans your environment constantly, every single second, looking for anything that might be a threat. A raised voice, a sudden movement, a facial expression, a tone, a memory. It processes this information in milliseconds, far faster than your conscious mind can keep up. And when it detects danger, real or perceived, it triggers a cascade of reactions designed to get you out of harm's way immediately. Your heart rate spikes. Stress hormones flood your bloodstream. Blood flow redirects away from your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning, planning, and self-control, and rushes to your limbs, preparing you to fight or run. Your vision narrows. Your thoughts speed up or shut down entirely. Your body moves into action before you even know why. This system saved your ancestors' lives. When a predator appeared, there was no time to think, to weigh options, to consider nuance. Hesitation meant death. So the amygdala learned to act first and ask questions later. Fast and crude beats slow and precise when survival is on the line. But here is the problem. Your amygdala does not know you are not being chased by a predator anymore. It cannot tell the difference between a lion and a critical email, between physical danger and social rejection, between a real threat and a perceived one. It just knows that something feels wrong, and it reacts the way it has always reacted, immediately, automatically, with everything it has. So when your partner asks if you finished that task, and their tone carries even a hint of frustration, your amygdala flags it as a threat. Not a life or death threat, but a threat to your status, your worth, your safety in the relationship. And it responds. Defensiveness rises. Your voice sharpens. You are protecting yourself from an attack that may not even be happening. When your coworker sends that curt message, your amygdala interprets it as rejection, as danger, as a signal that you are not safe in this social environment, and your nervous system reacts. Anxiety floods in. Your thoughts spiral. You try to fix it, avoid it, or defend against it, because your biology believes you are in danger. When you stand at the edge of an opportunity, your amygdala scans for all the ways it could go wrong, all the ways you could be humiliated, rejected, exposed. It does not care about your dreams or your potential. It cares about keeping you safe. And in its calculation, staying small is safer than being seen. So it floods you with fear. It paralyzes you. It keeps you hidden. Because hidden means safe, and safe means alive. This is not a flaw in you. This is the system working exactly as it was designed. The problem is the design is outdated. You are running software built for the savannah in the middle of a modern, complex, socially intricate world, and the mismatch creates suffering. But the amygdala is only part of the story. Because why does your amygdala flag certain things as threats while someone else's does not? Why does a critical comment send you spiraling while another person brushes it off? Why does your nervous system react so intensely to things that others barely notice? The answer lies in your history, in the experiences that wired your emotional templates, in the moments that taught your nervous system what to fear, what to brace for, what to expect. If you grew up with criticism, your nervous system learned to scan for judgment constantly. Every interaction became a potential evaluation. Every mistake became evidence of your inadequacy. Your amygdala was trained to see threat in feedback, in questions, in anything that could be interpreted as disapproval. Not because you are oversensitive, but because your environment taught you that criticism was dangerous, that it meant rejection, that it meant you were not good enough to be loved. If you experienced abandonment, your nervous system learned to be vigilant for signs that people are leaving. A delayed text, a cancelled plan, a shift in tone. These small things trigger alarm bells because your history taught you that people disappear. That connection is fragile, that you cannot trust anyone to stay. So your amygdala flags any hint of distance as a threat, and you react. You cling or you push away or you shut down, because your body is trying to protect you from the pain it remembers. If you grew up in chaos, your nervous system learned to expect disaster, to always be waiting for the other shoe to drop, to never fully relax because calm was always temporary and danger was always lurking. So now, even when your life is stable, your amygdala stays activated. It interprets peace as the calm before the storm. It keeps you in a state of hypervigilance, scanning for threats that are not there, reacting to shadows, because your past taught you that safety is an illusion. These are not character flaws. These are adaptations. Your nervous system did exactly what it needed to do to help you survive the environment you were in. It learned. It adapted. It developed patterns to keep you as safe as possible given the circumstances. But those patterns do not turn off when the circumstances change. The wiring remains. The templates stay active. And now you are reacting to the present as if it is the past. You are defending against threats that no longer exist. You are bracing for pain that is not coming. You are living in survival mode even though you are no longer in danger. And modern life makes it worse. Because your nervous system is not just dealing with your personal history. It is dealing with an environment that constantly overstimulates your threat detection system. Social media shows you everyone else's highlight reel, and your amygdala interprets it as evidence that you are falling behind, that you are not enough, that you are losing in some invisible competition. Every scroll is a potential threat to your status, your worth, your belonging. Notifications ping you constantly, fragmenting your attention, keeping your nervous system in a low-grade state of activation. Each alert is a small jolt, a tiny demand for your attention, and your amygdala treats each one as something that might be important, might be urgent, might be dangerous. So you never fully rest, you never fully settle. You are always a little bit on edge. News cycles are designed to provoke fear and outrage, because fear and outrage keep you watching. Your amygdala cannot tell that these are distant events that do not affect your immediate safety. It just knows that the world is full of threats, and it reacts accordingly. You feel anxious, angry, helpless, because your nervous system believes you are surrounded by danger. The modern world is not designed for your well-being. It is designed for engagement, for profit, for keeping you hooked. And your ancient alarm system, which was built for simple, immediate physical threats, is overwhelmed. It is constantly triggered, constantly activated, constantly flooding you with stress hormones and reactive impulses. And every time you react, you reinforce the pattern, because your brain learns through repetition. Every time the amygdala sounds the alarm and you respond, by snapping, by withdrawing, by panicking, you carve that neural pathway a little deeper. You make that reaction a little more automatic, a little more invisible. This is called conditioning, and it happens below the level of conscious awareness. Your brain is constantly learning what leads to what. If defensiveness follows criticism often enough, defensiveness becomes the automatic response. If anxiety follows uncertainty often enough, anxiety becomes your default state. If avoidance follows fear often enough, avoidance becomes your strategy for life. The pathways get so well worn that you do not even notice them anymore. The reaction happens before you know it is happening. You are defensive before you realize you feel threatened. You are spiraling before you notice you are anxious. You are frozen before you recognize you are afraid. This is why it feels so hard to change, because by the time you notice the reaction, it is already in motion. The amygdala has already fired. The chemicals have already flooded your system. The neural pathway has already activated. You are trying to stop a train that is already moving at full speed. But here is the crucial part. This is not permanent. Neural pathways are not set in stone. Your brain is not fixed. It is plastic, adaptable, constantly rewiring itself based on new experiences. The same mechanism that created these automatic reactions can create new ones. The same process that carved pathways of defensiveness and fear and avoidance can carve pathways of awareness and choice and intentional response. Every time you pause instead of react, you weaken the old pathway and strengthen a new one. Every time you notice the alarm before you obey it, you teach your brain that the threat is not what it seems. Every time you choose a different response, you prove to your nervous system that there is another way. The wiring can be rewired, the conditioning can be reconditioned, the patterns can be interrupted. Not overnight, not without effort, but absolutely, unquestionably, inevitably, if you do the work. So let go of the shame. Let go of the belief that you are broken or weak or fundamentally flawed. You are not failing. You are functioning exactly as you were wired to function. Your reactions make perfect sense when you understand the biology and the history behind them. Your amygdala is doing its job. Your nervous system is running the programs it learned. Your brain is following the pathways that were carved by repetition and survival and everything you went through to get here. But you are not a prisoner to this system. You are not helpless. You are not stuck. Because beneath the automatic reactions, beneath the conditioning, beneath the ancient wiring, there is awareness. There is choice. There is the ability to notice, to pause, to respond differently. And that is where the transformation begins. Not by fighting your biology, but by understanding it. Not by suppressing your reactions, but by creating space around them. Not by becoming someone else, but by becoming conscious of who you already are beneath the noise. The amygdala will keep doing its job. It will keep scanning for threats. It will keep sounding alarms. But you do not have to obey every alarm. You do not have to let every emotion dictate your actions. You can learn to hear the signal without following the command. And when you do, everything changes. Not because your history disappears, not because triggers stop existing, but because you stop being controlled by them. You stop reacting automatically and start responding consciously. You stop living as a prisoner and start living as a sovereign being. That is the promise. That is the path. And that is where we are going next. Now that you understand why you react, you need to understand where you are in the journey and where you are going. Because transformation is not a single leap. It is not one insight or one practice that suddenly makes you immune to reactivity. It is a progression through distinct stages, each with its own challenges and its own gifts. And knowing which stage you are in helps you see that you are not stuck. You are moving, even when it does not feel like it. There are 4 stages of emotional sovereignty, 4 levels of mastery between being controlled by your emotions and being able to hold them without being ruled by them. Most people move through these stages slowly, often without realizing they are progressing at all. But when you can name the stage you are in, you can navigate it with intention. You can see how far you have come and how far you still have to go. Stage 1 is where most people live most of the time. It is called unconscious reaction. At this stage, you are completely overtaken by emotion. There is no gap, no pause, no awareness. Something happens, and you react, instantly, totally. You do not see it coming. You do not recognize it as it happens. You are not watching the emotion. You are the emotion. When someone criticizes you, you do not think, "I am feeling defensive." You just are defensive. Your voice rises. Your body tenses. Words come out of your mouth that you did not plan, that you would not have chosen if you had a moment to consider them. But there is no moment. There is only the reaction, moving through you like a force of nature. When fear shows up, you do not observe it. You become it. You are not someone experiencing fear. You are fear itself, and it moves you, freezes you, controls you completely. You do not decide to avoid the risk or stay silent or play small. You just do, because in that moment, there is no you separate from the fear. This is the stage of total identification. The emotion and the self are fused. You cannot tell where the feeling ends, and you begin because there is no distinction. And because there is no distinction, there is no choice. You do what the emotion tells you to do. You say what it tells you to say. You are its instrument, not its observer. Living at stage 1 is exhausting and chaotic. You feel out of control because you are out of control. You hurt people you care about. You sabotage yourself. You make decisions that do not align with your values, and then spend hours afterward trying to understand why you did what you did. But in the moment, there was no why. There was only the emotion and the action that followed. If you are in stage 1, you are not broken. You are simply unaware. The first step out of this stage is not control. It is awareness. And awareness comes in the next stage. Stage 2 is conscious awareness. This is where you begin to notice your reactions after they occur. You snap at someone, and an hour later you realize, "I did it again." You spiral into anxiety, and by the end of the day you recognize the pattern. You avoid the opportunity, and later that night you see that it was fear that made the choice, not you. You are no longer completely blind. You can see the storm, but only after it has passed. You look back and recognize what happened. You start to identify your triggers. You notice that certain people, certain situations, certain tones or topics set you off. You see the patterns. You understand, at least intellectually, that you are reacting from old wounds or conditioned responses. But you still cannot stop it in the moment. You see it coming sometimes, feel the tension building, sense that something is about to happen, but the reaction still overtakes you. You are aware, but not in time to choose differently. Stage 2 can be frustrating, because now you know what you are doing. Now you can see the damage. Now you have insight, but not yet power. You feel like you should be able to change, and when you cannot, the shame deepens. You think, "I know better. Why do I keep doing this?" But this stage is essential. This is where learning happens. You are gathering data. You are becoming an observer of your own patterns. You are starting to separate yourself from the emotion, just enough to see that it is not you. It is something happening to you. and that tiny bit of separation is the seed of everything that comes next. If you are in stage 2, do not despair. You are not failing. You are waking up. The awareness you have now is the foundation of the awareness you will have in real time. You cannot skip this stage. You have to see the pattern in hindsight before you can catch it in the moment. Stage 3 is real-time recognition. This is where the transformation becomes tangible. This is where you start to catch the reaction as it begins to rise. You feel the heat in your face, and you notice it. You feel the tightness in your chest, and you recognize it. You feel the impulse to snap, to shut down, to run, and there is a flash of awareness. This is happening right now. You see the wave before it crashes. You are still in the water. The emotion is still powerful, but now there is a sliver of space between the feeling and the action. A moment where you can see what is happening and realize you have a choice. This does not mean you always make the right choice. Sometimes the wave still crashes. Sometimes the reaction still takes over. But now you see it happening. Now you can name it. I am getting defensive. I am spiraling into anxiety. I am about to shut down. The simple act of naming creates distance. It reminds you that you are not the emotion. You are the one experiencing the emotion. Stage 3 is where power begins, because once you can see the reaction in real time, you can intervene. You can pause, you can breathe, you can choose a different response, even if it is just choosing to stay silent instead of saying the thing that will make everything worse. Even if it is just choosing to stay present instead of fleeing. This stage feels unstable. Sometimes you catch it. Sometimes you do not. Sometimes you see the reaction clearly and still get swept away by it. But you are no longer unconscious. You are no longer blind. You are starting to live in the gap between stimulus and response, and that gap is where your freedom lives. If you are in stage 3, celebrate it. This is proof that change is possible. This is evidence that you are not a prisoner to your emotions. Every time you catch the reaction in real time, you are rewiring your brain. You are strengthening the observer, the part of you that can watch without being consumed. You are training yourself to live in the pause. Stage 4 is proactive response. This is mastery. This is where you no longer react, you respond. The emotion arises, but it does not control you. You feel everything, but you decide what to do with it. Someone criticizes you, and you feel the sting. The defensiveness rises, but instead of obeying it, you observe it. You let it move through you without letting it move you. You pause, you breathe, you consider, and then you respond from a place of clarity, not reaction. Maybe you ask a question. Maybe you acknowledge the feedback. Maybe you set a boundary. Whatever you do, it is a choice, not an impulse. Fear shows up, and you feel it fully. The tightness in your chest, the racing thoughts, the urge to retreat. But you do not let fear make the decision. You acknowledge it. You thank it for trying to protect you. And then you act anyway. You speak up. You take the risk. You move forward, carrying the fear with you instead of being stopped by it. At stage 4, you are no longer controlled by your emotions. You are informed by them. They are signals, not orders. They are messengers, not masters. You feel deeply, but you are not ruled by what you feel. This does not mean you are always calm. It does not mean you never get angry or anxious or hurt. It means that when those feelings arise, you have the capacity to hold them without being overtaken by them. You can be angry and still speak with respect. You can be afraid and still take action. You can be hurt and still stay open. Stage 4 is freedom. Not freedom from emotion, but freedom within emotion. You are no longer at war with your feelings. You are no longer trying to suppress or control or eliminate them. You simply hold space for them. You let them exist without letting them dictate your choices. Living at stage 4 does not mean you never go back to the other stages. You will. There will be moments when something catches you off guard and you react before you can catch yourself. There will be days when you are tired or stressed or triggered in a way you did not see coming, and you will find yourself back in stage 1 or 2. That is not failure. That is being human. Mastery is not perfection. It is not never reacting. It is knowing how to return. It is recognizing when you have been hijacked and knowing how to come back to center without shame, without collapse, without giving up. The goal is not to never feel. The goal is to never be ruled by what you feel. The goal is to move through these stages with increasing ease, to spend more time in stage 3 and 4 and less time in stage 1 and 2. To shorten the distance between the reaction and the recognition, to widen the gap between the stimulus and the response. You cannot force yourself from stage 1 to stage 4 overnight. You have to move through each stage. You have to build the skills, the awareness, the neural pathways that allow you to progress. But every time you notice a reaction after it happens, you are moving from stage 1 to stage 2. Every time you catch it in real time, you are moving from stage 2 to stage 3. Every time you pause and choose, you are touching stage 4. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. The observer gets stronger. The gap gets wider. The reactions get quieter. Not because you have eliminated your emotions, but because you have learned to hold them. Not because you have become someone else, but because you have remembered who you are beneath the noise. This is the journey. These are the stages. And wherever you are right now, you are exactly where you need to be. Because transformation does not happen all at once. It happens in layers, in moments, in the slow, steady progression from unconsciousness to awareness to choice. You are not stuck. You are moving. And every moment of awareness, every flash of recognition, every pause you create is proof that you are becoming someone who can hold emotion without being held by it. Someone who can feel everything and still choose wisely. Someone who is no longer reactive, but responsive. No longer controlled, but sovereign. And that is where real power begins. Now you need a tool, not a theory, not a concept, a practice. Something you can use the next time you feel the reaction rising. Something simple, immediate, and powerful enough to interrupt the automatic pattern and create the space where choice becomes possible. This tool is called the sacred pause. And it is sacred because it is the birthplace of your freedom. It is the moment where you stop being controlled and start being conscious, where you stop reacting and start responding, where you reclaim the gap between what happens to you and what you choose to do about it. The sacred pause is a deliberate interruption, a conscious break in the chain between stimulus and response. It is not suppression. It is not pushing the emotion down or pretending it is not there. It is creation. You are creating space where none existed before. You are inserting awareness into the automatic sequence. And in that space, everything changes. But to use the pause, you first have to recognize that a reaction is happening. You have to catch it before it overtakes you completely. And that means learning to read your body's earliest signals, because your body always knows before your mind does. The first signal is often your breathing. It changes. It quickens or it stops altogether. You might notice yourself holding your breath or taking shallow, rapid breaths from your chest instead of deep, full breaths from your belly. This is your nervous system shifting into activation, preparing for fight or flight. If you can catch the breath changing, you can catch the reaction before it takes over. The second signal is tension. Your jaw tightens, your shoulders rise, your fists clench, your stomach knots. Somewhere in your body, something contracts, hardens, braces. This is the physical preparation for defense or escape. Your body is getting ready to act, and if you can feel the tension forming, you can intervene before the action happens. The third signal is focus. Your attention narrows. Your vision tunnels. You stop seeing the whole picture and fixate on the threat, the trigger, the thing that set you off. Your thoughts speed up or loop obsessively. Your mental field collapses down to a single point of intensity. This narrowing is part of the threat response. It helps you focus on survival. But it also blinds you to choice. If you can notice your focus narrowing, you can widen it again. These signals happen fast, milliseconds, but they are there. And the more you practice noticing them, the more sensitive you become. You start to feel the reaction forming before it fully forms. You catch the heat rising before it becomes rage. You catch the tightness forming before it becomes panic. You catch the impulse forming before it becomes action. And the moment you notice any of these signals, you activate the pause. You stop. You do not act. You do not speak. You do not move. You simply stop and create space. Just a few seconds. That is all it takes. A few seconds where you consciously interrupt the automatic sequence and give yourself the chance to choose. The first step in the pause is to label what you are feeling, out loud if you can, or silently if you cannot. Just name it. I am feeling anger. I am noticing fear. I am experiencing shame. The act of labeling is powerful because it creates separation. When you say, I am feeling anger, you are no longer the anger. You are the one experiencing anger. You are the observer, not the emotion itself. This might sound like a small distinction, but it is everything. Because when you are the anger, you have no choice. You are overtaken. But when you are the one experiencing anger, there is space. There is a you separate from the emotion. And in that separation lives the possibility of choosing what to do next. Do not judge the emotion. Do not try to make it go away. Just name it. Acknowledge it. There it is. That is fear. That is defensiveness. That is hurt. You are simply reporting what is happening, like a scientist observing data. No shame, no resistance, just awareness. The second step is to extend your exhale. This is physiological intervention. When you are in a reactive state, your sympathetic nervous system is activated, the system responsible for fight, flight, and freeze. To shift out of reactivity, you need to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for rest, calm, and regulation. The fastest way to do that is through your breath, specifically through a long, slow exhale. When you exhale slowly, you stimulate the vagus nerve, which sends a signal to your brain that you are safe. This is not a metaphor. This is biology. A long exhale tells your nervous system to stand down, to release the alarm, to return to baseline. So after you label the emotion, you breathe. Inhale through your nose for a count of 4. Then exhale through your mouth for a count of 6 or 8. Make the exhale longer than the inhale. Do this 2 or 3 times. You will feel the shift. The intensity will soften. The urgency will lessen. The emotion will still be there, but it will no longer have the same grip on you. The third step is to shift your attention from the mental story to the physical sensation. Because when you are reactive, your mind spins stories. It tells you why you are right to be angry, why you should be afraid, why this is proof of something terrible. The story amplifies the emotion and keeps you stuck in the reaction. So instead of following the story, you drop into your body. You feel the sensation. Where is the anger in your body? Is it heat in your chest? Tension in your jaw? Tightness in your fists? Just feel it. Do not try to change it. Just observe it. There is heat, there is tightness, there is a knot in my stomach. When you focus on the physical sensation instead of the mental narrative, something shifts. The emotion becomes less overwhelming. It is no longer a catastrophic story, it is just a sensation. And sensations are temporary. They rise and they fall. They move and they change. You do not have to do anything with them. You just have to feel them and let them pass. This is the sacred pause. Label, breathe, feel. It takes seconds. And in those seconds, you create the space where choice becomes possible. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. You are in an argument with your partner. They say something that hits wrong. The heat rises instantly. Your chest tightens. Your jaw clenches. The words are already forming on your tongue, sharp and ready. This is the moment. This is where you would normally snap back, say something you will regret, escalate the conflict. But instead, you pause. You feel the heat. You notice the tightness, and you label it. I am feeling defensive. You do not say it out loud. You just name it internally. Then you breathe. One slow inhale. One long exhale. You feel the sensation in your chest, the tension in your throat. You do not follow the story your mind is spinning about, how they are wrong, and you need to defend yourself. You just feel the heat and breathe through it. And in those few seconds, the intensity softens. The urgency fades. You are still upset. The emotion is still there. But now there is space around it. Now you can choose. You can respond instead of react. Maybe you say, I need a moment. Maybe you ask a clarifying question. Maybe you acknowledge their point before you share yours. Whatever you do, it comes from awareness, not impulse, from choice, not compulsion. Or imagine this. You receive criticism at work, something about your performance, your approach, your results. The shame crashes over you instantly. Your stomach drops, your face burns, your mind floods with thoughts. I am not good enough. I never will be. They are going to realize I do not belong here. This is the moment. This is where you would normally collapse inward, shut down, spiral into self-doubt. But instead, you pause. You feel the shame. You notice the heat in your face, the tightness in your throat, and you label it. I am noticing shame. You breathe, long exhale. You drop into the sensation, the knot in your stomach, the heaviness in your chest. You do not believe the story. You do not follow the spiral. You just feel the feeling and let it exist. And in those few seconds, something shifts. The shame is still there, but you are no longer drowning in it. You are holding it. You can see that it is a feeling, not a fact. You can recognize that the criticism is feedback, not proof of your worthlessness. And from that place, you can respond. You can ask questions. You can take what is useful and leave what is not. You can learn instead of collapsing, or this. You have an opportunity in front of you, a chance to speak, to apply, to reach, to risk. The fear shows up immediately. Your heart races. Your thoughts scramble. Your body feels frozen. This is the moment. This is where you would normally pull back, stay silent, let the moment pass. But instead, you pause. You feel the fear. You notice your heart pounding, your breath quickening, and you label it. I am noticing fear. You breathe. You extend the exhale. You feel the sensation, the tightness, the trembling, the adrenaline. You do not let the fear decide. You just feel it. You let it be there. You acknowledge it. Yes, this is scary. Yes, I am afraid. And then, carrying the fear with you, you act anyway. You speak. You raise your hand. You take the step. Not because the fear is gone, but because you are no longer controlled by it. This is what the sacred pause creates. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of choice. Not the elimination of fear, or anger, or shame, but the ability to hold those feelings without being ruled by them. The pause does not make you cold or detached. It does not turn you into someone who does not feel. It makes you someone who feels fully and still chooses wisely. Someone who can be angry and still speak with respect. Someone who can be afraid and still move forward. Someone who can be hurt and still stay open. The distinction is simple but profound. You are not the emotion. You are the one experiencing the emotion. The anger is not you. It is something moving through you. The fear is not you. It is a signal, a sensation, a temporary state. And when you can see that distinction, when you can create even the smallest space between the feeling and the self, everything changes. Because now you have options. Now you can pause and breathe instead of snapping. Now you can feel the fear and act anyway. Now you can notice the shame without letting it define you. Now you are no longer a passenger. You are the driver. You are sovereign. The sacred pause is the tool. It is simple. It is portable. It works in any situation, with any emotion, at any level of intensity. And the more you use it, the more automatic it becomes. The gap widens, the observer strengthens, the reactions quiet, and you become someone who lives in the space between stimulus and response. Someone who is no longer controlled. Someone who is free. The sacred pause is your foundation. It is the tool that creates space, the practice that interrupts the automatic pattern and gives you access to choice. But mastery requires more than one tool. It requires sophistication. It requires the ability to read your emotions with precision, to prepare for triggers before they arrive, to challenge the stories your mind creates, and to act in ways that align with your values, even when your feelings pull you in the opposite direction. These are the advanced tools, the reinforcements that deepen your practice and expand your range. They build on the pause, adding layers of awareness and flexibility that transform reactivity into wisdom. The first advanced tool is emotional granularity. This is the ability to name your feelings with precision instead of using broad, vague labels. Most people have a limited emotional vocabulary. They know they are angry or sad or anxious, but they stop there. They do not go deeper. They do not refine the label. And because they do not refine the label, they do not understand what the emotion is actually telling them. Anger, for example, is not just anger. It can be disappointment when your expectations were not met. It can be betrayal when trust was broken. It can be frustration when progress is blocked. It can be overwhelm when demands exceed your capacity. It can be fear disguised as aggression. Each of these requires a different response. Disappointment needs communication. Betrayal needs boundaries. Frustration needs problem solving. Overwhelm needs rest. Fear needs reassurance. But if you only label it as anger, you miss the nuance. You react to the surface emotion without addressing the deeper need. You snap at someone when what you really need is to ask for help. You withdraw when what you really need is to repair trust. You escalate when what you really need is to slow down. So when you pause and label the emotion, go deeper. Do not stop at "I am feeling angry." Ask yourself, what kind of angry? What is beneath this? Is it hurt? Is it fear? Is it exhaustion? The more precise your label, the more useful the information. And the more useful the information, the wiser your response. The same is true for anxiety. Anxiety is not just anxiety. It can be anticipation of something exciting but unfamiliar. It can be dread of something you do not want to face. It can be hypervigilance from past trauma. It can be your body telling you something is off and needs attention. Each of these points to a different path forward. Anticipation needs reassurance that you can handle what is coming. Dread needs honest evaluation of whether you need to set a boundary. Hypervigilance needs grounding in the present. Intuition needs listening. Develop your emotional vocabulary. Learn the words for what you feel. Disappointed, betrayed, frustrated, overwhelmed, anxious, excited, vulnerable, ashamed, lonely, envious, grateful. Each emotion is a messenger, and the more clearly you can hear the message, the more effectively you can respond. The second advanced tool is pre-commitment. This is the practice of deciding in advance how you will respond to common triggers. Because in the heat of the moment, when the emotion is flooding your system, decision-making is compromised. Your prefrontal cortex is offline, your amygdala is in control, and the automatic pattern is the easiest path to follow. But if you decide ahead of time what you will do, you do not have to make the decision in the moment. The path is already laid. You are simply following a plan you made when you were calm, clear, and connected to your values. Think about your most common triggers, the situations that predictably set you off, the tone your partner uses, the type of feedback your boss gives, the comparison you make when you scroll social media, the fear that shows up before you take a risk. These are not random. They are patterns, and patterns can be prepared for. So decide now, when you are not activated, how you want to respond. Write it down if it helps. When my partner uses that tone, I will pause and ask them to rephrase. When my boss gives criticism, I will take 3 breaths before I respond. When I feel the comparison spiral starting, I will close the app and go for a walk. When fear shows up before an opportunity, I will acknowledge it and take one small action anyway. Pre-commitment removes the burden of choice from the reactive moment. You are not trying to figure out what to do while your nervous system is hijacked. You are simply executing a plan. And the more you execute the plan, the more automatic the new response becomes. You are rewiring the pattern. You are replacing the old automatic reaction with a new automatic response that aligns with who you want to be. The third advanced tool is cognitive reframing. This is the practice of questioning the story you are telling yourself about what happened. Because most of your emotional pain does not come from the event itself. It comes from the interpretation, the meaning you assign, the narrative you construct. Someone does not respond to your text, and you tell yourself, "They are ignoring me. They do not care." That story creates hurt, anxiety, withdrawal. But what if the story is wrong? What if they did not see the message? What if they are busy? What if they care deeply but are simply overwhelmed right now? The facts are the same. They did not respond. But the story changes everything. When you notice yourself reacting strongly to something, pause and examine the story. What are you telling yourself about what happened? Is it the only possible interpretation? Is it even likely? Or are you filling in gaps with assumptions based on old wounds and familiar fears? They ignored me becomes they might not have seen me. I failed becomes I learned something valuable. They think I am incompetent becomes I do not actually know what they think. This will never work becomes this is hard and I am figuring it out. Reframing is not denial. It is not pretending something painful did not happen or that your feelings are not valid. It is recognizing that your first interpretation is not necessarily the truth. It is creating space for other possibilities, other perspectives, other stories that might serve you better. And often, the simple act of questioning the story loosens its grip. The emotion softens. The reaction loses its urgency. You can see that you are reacting to a narrative, not to reality. And from that place, you can choose a wiser response. The fourth advanced tool is emotional rehearsal. This is the practice of mentally walking through high-stress scenarios before they happen and practicing your response in imagination. Athletes do this. Performers do this. Surgeons do this. They visualize the high-pressure moment and rehearse their actions so that when the real situation arrives, their body already knows what to do. You can do the same with emotional triggers. Think about a situation that typically sets you off. A difficult conversation, a tense meeting, a moment of vulnerability. Close your eyes and imagine it unfolding. Feel the trigger arriving. Notice where the reaction starts in your body. And then practice the pause. Practice the breath. Practice the label. Practice the response you want to have instead of the reaction you usually have. Do this repeatedly. Not obsessively, but intentionally. Walk through the scenario in your mind and rehearse the new pattern. You are training your nervous system. You are carving a new pathway. You are giving your body a script to follow when the real moment comes. When the situation actually happens, it will not feel completely new. Your nervous system will recognize it. You will have a sense of familiarity, a felt memory of choosing differently. And that familiarity makes the new response more accessible. You are more likely to pause because you have practiced pausing. You are more likely to choose because you have practiced choosing. The fifth advanced tool is opposite action. This is one of the most powerful and counterintuitive practices in emotional mastery. It is the deliberate choice to act in the opposite direction of what your emotion is telling you to do. Not because the emotion is wrong, but because the action it demands is not always in your best interest. Fear says run. Opposite action is to stay. To move toward the thing that scares you instead of away from it. Not recklessly. Not ignoring real danger. But when the fear is disproportionate, when it is trying to keep you small instead of safe, you act opposite. You speak up even though you are terrified. You reach out even though you are afraid of rejection. You take the risk even though every part of you wants to retreat. Anger says attack. Opposite action is to soften. To lower your voice instead of raising it. To ask a question instead of making an accusation. To move toward connection instead of destruction. You still feel the anger. You still honor it. But you refuse to let it dictate your behavior. You choose repair over revenge. Shame says hide. Opposite action is to show up. To be seen even when you feel exposed. To share your struggle instead of pretending everything is fine. To stay in the room instead of disappearing. Shame thrives in secrecy and isolation. Opposite action is the antidote. You reveal instead of conceal. You connect instead of withdraw. Opposite action is not suppression. It is not pretending you do not feel what you feel. It is recognizing that feelings are valid, but the actions they demand are not always wise. It is creating space between the emotion and the behavior. It is refusing to let your feelings write the script for your life. And here is what happens when you practice opposite action. You prove to yourself that you are not controlled. You demonstrate that you can feel the fear and still act with courage. You can feel the anger and still respond with kindness. You can feel the shame and still show up with authenticity. And every time you do this, you strengthen your sovereignty. You deepen your trust in yourself. You expand your sense of what is possible. These advanced tools are not separate from the sacred pause. They build on it. They refine it. They give you more ways to work with your emotions instead of being worked by them. Emotional granularity helps you understand what you are feeling. Pre-commitment helps you prepare for what is coming. Cognitive reframing helps you question the stories you tell. Emotional rehearsal helps you train your nervous system. Opposite action helps you align your behavior with your values instead of your impulses. Mastery is not built in a day. It is built through repetition, variation, and conscious integration. You practice the pause until it becomes second nature. You refine your emotional vocabulary until you can name what you feel with precision. You prepare for triggers until your responses become intentional. You question your stories until you stop believing the first narrative your mind creates. You rehearse new patterns until your body knows them by heart. You act opposite until your emotions no longer dictate your choices. And slowly, steadily, inevitably, you become someone who is no longer reactive. Someone who feels everything and still chooses wisely. Someone who is sovereign. But here is the truth that most people miss. Emotional control is not just a skill you deploy in the moment. It is a state, a baseline, a capacity that is either supported or undermined by how you live every single day. You can have all the tools, all the techniques, all the awareness in the world, but if your nervous system is chronically depleted, if your body is running on fumes, if your environment is constantly destabilizing you, then every moment of reactivity becomes a battle you have to fight with willpower alone. And willpower is finite. It runs out. It weakens when you are tired, stressed, hungry, overwhelmed. You cannot rely on willpower to save you in the heat of the moment if the conditions of your life are working against you. Long-term mastery is not about perfecting your response in the moment. It is about designing a life that makes calm your default instead of your exception. It is about building a nervous system that is resilient, regulated, and resourced enough to handle difficulty without collapsing into reactivity. You are not just changing behavior. You are changing the soil in which behavior grows. This begins with the fundamentals, the foundational pillars that either stabilize or destabilize your emotional state. Sleep, movement, nutrition, connection. These are not luxuries. They are not things you get to when you have time. They are the infrastructure of emotional sovereignty. And when any of them is compromised, your capacity for regulation is compromised with it. Start with sleep. When you are sleep-deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, impulse control, and emotional regulation, goes offline. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the alarm system, becomes hyperactive. You are walking around with an overactive threat detector, and an underactive regulator. Everything feels more intense. Every trigger feels bigger. Every emotion feels harder to manage. You snap at things that normally would not bother you. You spiral over small setbacks. You cannot access perspective or patience because the part of your brain that provides those things is not fully online. Sleep is not optional. It is not something you sacrifice for productivity or entertainment or scrolling. It is the foundation of your ability to stay calm, think clearly, and respond wisely. When you prioritize sleep, you are prioritizing your capacity to be sovereign. You are giving your brain the rest it needs to regulate your emotions instead of being hijacked by them. Movement is next. When you experience stress, your body produces cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones prepare you for action, for fighting or running. But in modern life, you rarely discharge them through physical action. You sit in the meeting. You stay at your desk. You hold it all in. And the stress hormones accumulate in your system, keeping you in a state of low-grade activation. Your nervous system never fully returns to baseline. You are always a little bit on edge, a little bit reactive, a little bit ready to explode. Movement is how you complete the stress cycle. When you move your body, walk, run, dance, lift, stretch, you burn through the stress hormones. You signal to your nervous system that the threat has passed, that you are safe, that it can stand down. Movement resets you. It discharges the tension. It brings you back to baseline. And when you are at baseline, you have more capacity, more resilience, more space between trigger and reaction. You do not need intense workouts every day. You just need to move regularly, intentionally, enough to keep your nervous system fluid instead of stuck, enough to process the stress of living instead of letting it accumulate until you break. Nutrition is the third pillar. Your brain runs on glucose. When your blood sugar is unstable, spiking and crashing throughout the day, your mood is unstable with it. You feel irritable, foggy, anxious, reactive. You reach for quick fixes, caffeine, sugar, processed foods that give you a temporary boost, followed by a crash that makes everything worse. Stable blood sugar equals stable mood. When you eat in a way that keeps your energy consistent, whole foods, protein, healthy fats, complex carbohydrates, you give your brain the fuel it needs to function well. You reduce the physiological stress that makes emotional regulation harder. You support the systems in your body that keep you calm, clear, and capable. This is not about perfection. It is about consistency. It is about recognizing that what you put in your body affects your capacity to manage your emotions. And when you are trying to build sovereignty, every advantage matters. The fourth pillar is connection. You are not meant to regulate alone. Human beings are wired for co-regulation, for calming down in the presence of another calm nervous system. When you are dysregulated, stressed, overwhelmed, being around someone who is grounded and present can help bring you back to center. Their calm becomes contagious. Their nervous system communicates safety to yours. But the opposite is also true. When you are surrounded by people who are reactive, chaotic, or emotionally volatile, their dysregulation affects you. You absorb it. You mirror it. You find yourself more activated, more on edge, more reactive, not because of your own state, but because of theirs. Connection is a pillar of emotional health. Not just any connection, but safe connection. Relationships where you feel seen, heard, valued, where you can be honest without fear of judgment, where you can share your struggles without being made to feel broken. These relationships stabilize you. They provide a buffer against stress. They remind you that you are not alone, that you are worthy, that you belong. If you do not have these relationships, building them becomes part of your work. If you are surrounded by people who destabilize you, setting boundaries or creating distance becomes essential. Your emotional sovereignty depends not just on what you do, but on who you are with. But even with these pillars in place, life is stressful. Demands accumulate, tensions build. And if you do not have a practice of daily recalibration, of returning to baseline regularly instead of waiting until you break, you will eventually become depleted. And depletion lowers your threshold for reactivity. When you are running on empty, everything feels like a threat. Every request feels overwhelming. Every inconvenience feels catastrophic. You have no reserves, no buffer, no space. This is why daily recalibration matters, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. You need practices that reset your nervous system before the tension accumulates to the point of collapse. Morning routines are one form of recalibration. How you start your day sets the tone for your nervous system. If you begin with stress, checking your phone immediately, rushing through the morning, flooding your system with demands and information before you have even fully woken up, you start the day already activated, already reactive, already behind. But if you start with intention, with a few minutes of stillness, breathing, movement, or gratitude, you prime your nervous system for calm. You set a baseline of regulation that carries through the day. You remind your body that it is safe, that there is space, that not everything is urgent. Evening rituals are another form of recalibration. How you end your day determines how well you sleep, how fully you rest, how ready you are to begin again tomorrow. If you carry the stress of the day into the night, ruminating, scrolling, staying activated until you collapse, you never fully let go. You wake up still carrying yesterday's tension. But if you create a ritual that processes and releases, journaling, stretching, breathing, reflecting, you complete the day. You allow your nervous system to stand down. You give yourself permission to rest. And rest is where resilience is rebuilt. Micro breaks throughout the day are the third form of recalibration. You do not have to wait until evening to reset. You can pause between tasks. You can take 3 deep breaths before a meeting. You can step outside for 2 minutes. You can close your eyes and feel your body. These small moments of recalibration prevent the accumulation of tension. They keep you at baseline instead of letting stress compound until you explode. Recalibration is not indulgence. It is maintenance. It is how you sustain your capacity for sovereignty over the long term. Without it, you are constantly operating from a depleted state, and depletion makes mastery impossible. But lifestyle is not just about what you do. It is also about what you are exposed to, the environments you inhabit, the inputs you consume, the chronic stressors you tolerate. This is where environmental design comes in. Think about the triggers in your environment, the notifications that constantly pull your attention, the social media feeds that provoke comparison and inadequacy, the news cycles that flood you with fear and outrage, the relationships that drain you, the spaces that stress you. These are not neutral. They shape your baseline state. They either stabilize you or destabilize you. Environmental design is the practice of intentionally curating your surroundings to support your nervous system instead of undermining it. This might mean turning off notifications, limiting social media, choosing what news you consume and when, setting boundaries with people who are chronically reactive or critical, creating physical spaces that feel calm and safe instead of chaotic and cluttered. You cannot control everything, but you can control more than you think. And every choice you make to reduce chronic stress, to limit unnecessary activation, to surround yourself with stability instead of chaos, is a choice that supports your sovereignty. This includes the people you spend time with. You become like the people you are around. If you are surrounded by people who are reactive, who spiral, who blame, who complain without taking responsibility, you will find it harder to stay centered. Their patterns will become your patterns. But if you surround yourself with people who are working on themselves, who pause before they react, who take responsibility for their emotions, who are honest and kind and grounded, you will find it easier to embody those qualities yourself. Their growth will reinforce your growth. Choose your relationships carefully. Invest in the ones that make you better. Set boundaries with the ones that pull you down. And if necessary, create distance from the ones that make sovereignty impossible. Long-term mastery is not about willpower in the moment. It is about creating conditions where calm is your default, where your nervous system is resourced enough to handle stress without collapsing into reactivity, where your environment supports your growth instead of sabotaging it, where your daily practices reset you instead of letting tension accumulate until you break. You are not just changing behavior. You are changing the soil in which behavior grows. And when the soil is rich, when you are rested, nourished, connected, and recalibrated, mastery becomes natural. Not easy, but natural. Not automatic, but accessible. You have the reserves, the resilience, the capacity to pause, to choose, to respond instead of react. This is the foundation. This is how you sustain sovereignty over the long term. Not through force, but through design. Not through willpower, but through wisdom. Not by fighting your biology, but by supporting it. You build a life that makes emotional control possible. And from that foundation, everything else follows. And if any part of you doubts that this is possible, if any part of you wonders whether you can actually change the way you have always been, let the science speak, because this is not wishful thinking. This is not spiritual bypassing or motivational fluff. This is biology. And biology can be trained. Your brain is not fixed. It is not hardwired in a way that locks you into permanent patterns of reactivity. It is plastic, adaptive, constantly reshaping itself based on your experiences, your choices, your repeated actions. This is called neuroplasticity, and it is one of the most important discoveries in modern neuroscience. Neuroplasticity means that your brain forms new neural pathways based on what you do repeatedly. Every thought you think, every action you take, every response you choose, these create connections between neurons. And the more you repeat a particular thought or action, the stronger that connection becomes. It is like walking through a field. The first time you have to push through tall grass. The second time the path is a little clearer. The 100th time there is a well-worn trail. That is what is happening in your brain every time you repeat a pattern. The automatic reactions you have now, the defensiveness, the fear, the shutdown, these are well-worn trails. You have walked them thousands of times. They are fast. They are efficient. They require no conscious thought. Your brain defaults to them because they are familiar and because at some point they served a purpose. They kept you safe, or at least they felt like they did. But here is the powerful part. Every time you pause instead of react, every time you choose a different response, you are creating a new trail. You are forming a new neural pathway. And every time you walk that new path, you make it a little stronger, a little clearer, a little easier to access next time. At the same time, when you stop using the old pathway, it begins to weaken. The trail grows over. The connection fades. Not immediately, not after 1 or 2 tries, but over time, with repetition, the old automatic reaction loses its grip, and the new conscious response becomes the one your brain reaches for first. This is not metaphor. This is measurable. Brain imaging studies show that people who practice mindfulness, who pause and observe, their emotions, instead of immediately reacting to them, develop increased activity and density in the prefrontal cortex. This is the region of your brain responsible for executive function, impulse control, and emotional regulation. It is the part of you that can override the amygdala, that can see the bigger picture, that can choose a response instead of defaulting to a reaction. The prefrontal cortex is what allows you to pause, to think, to consider consequences, to hold space for competing emotions and still make a wise decision. And the more you practice pausing, the more you engage this part of your brain, the stronger it becomes. Literally, you are building the neural infrastructure of sovereignty. Meanwhile, practices like the sacred pause also change the amygdala. Research shows that consistent mindfulness practice reduces amygdala reactivity. The alarm system becomes less sensitive. It does not fire as quickly or as intensely. It learns that not everything is a threat. It learns to trust the prefrontal cortex to evaluate the situation before sounding the alarm. This does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being hijacked. You feel the emotion, but you are not overtaken by it. This is the science behind what you are learning. You are not trying to suppress your emotions or become someone you are not. You are training your brain to respond differently. You are strengthening the part of you that can observe, regulate, and choose. And with repetition, this becomes your new default. Another critical concept from neuroscience is the window of tolerance. This comes from polyvagal theory, which explains how your nervous system regulates your emotional state. The window of tolerance is the zone in which you can think clearly, respond flexibly, and tolerate discomfort without collapsing into reactivity. When you are inside this window, you have access to your prefrontal cortex. You can pause, you can reflect, you can choose. But when something pushes you outside your window, you enter one of 2 zones. The first is hyperarousal, the zone of fight or flight. Your heart races, your thoughts speed up. You feel agitated, angry, panicked. You are activated, ready to defend or escape. In this zone, the prefrontal cortex is offline. You are operating purely from survival instinct. The second zone is hypoarousal, the zone of freeze or shut down. Your energy drops. Your thoughts slow down or stop altogether. You feel numb, disconnected, helpless. You cannot think clearly. You cannot act. You are collapsed, waiting for the danger to pass. Most reactive behavior happens when you are outside your window of tolerance. You are either too activated or too shut down to access your capacity for regulation. And the size of your window determines how much stress you can handle before you tip into reactivity. Here is the important part. Your window of tolerance is not fixed. It can be expanded. And the practices you are learning, breathwork, movement, connection, the sacred pause, these are the tools that widen your window over time. Breathwork, particularly slow exhales, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the rest and digest system, the part of your nervous system that calms you down and brings you back into your window. Every time you breathe slowly and intentionally, You are training your nervous system to regulate itself more effectively. You are expanding your capacity to stay calm under pressure. Movement discharges stress hormones and completes the stress cycle. It tells your nervous system that the threat has passed, that you are safe, that it can return to baseline. Regular movement does not just improve your physical health, it increases your emotional resilience. It widens your window. It gives you more capacity to handle stress without collapsing into reactivity. Connection, particularly safe and attuned connection, co-regulates your nervous system. When you are with someone who is calm and present, their nervous system communicates safety to yours. This is not metaphorical. This is physiological. Your heart rate, your breathing, your tone of voice, all of these sync up with the people you are around. Safe connection expands your window. It reminds your nervous system that you are not alone, that you are held, that you can tolerate difficulty without breaking. Research on mindfulness meditation shows that consistent practice leads to measurable changes in brain structure and function. Studies using functional MRI scans show increased gray matter density in areas associated with emotional regulation, self-awareness, and compassion. They show decreased activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for rumination and self-referential thinking, the part that spins stories and keeps you stuck in reactive loops. Cognitive behavioral therapy research demonstrates that changing your thoughts changes your emotional responses and, over time, changes your brain. When you practice cognitive reframing, questioning the stories you tell yourself about what is happening, you are not just thinking differently in the moment. You are rewiring the neural pathways that generate those thoughts. You are training your brain to default to more accurate, more compassionate, more empowering interpretations. Emotion regulation research shows that people who can name their emotions with precision, who practice emotional granularity, experience less emotional overwhelm and recover from stress more quickly. Labeling an emotion activates the prefrontal cortex and reduces amygdala reactivity. The simple act of naming what you feel creates distance between you and the emotion. It engages the part of your brain that can regulate instead of just react. And then there is the body. Because the brain is not the only place where emotion lives, the body keeps the score. Trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk has shown that unprocessed emotion, particularly trauma, lives in the nervous system and the tissues of the body. When you experience something overwhelming and you do not have the capacity to process it in the moment, the emotional charge gets stored. It stays in your body, waiting to be released. This is why you can feel anxiety in your chest, shame in your gut, anger in your fists, even when there is no immediate threat. The body is holding the unprocessed emotion, and until it is released, it continues to influence your reactivity. You are not just reacting to the present moment, you are reacting to the accumulated, unprocessed charge of the past. Somatic practices, practices that work directly with the body, help release this stored emotion. Breathwork, movement, mindful awareness of physical sensation, these practices allow the body to complete what it could not complete in the past. They discharge the tension. They release the holding. They allow your nervous system to reset. This is why the sacred pause includes feeling the sensation in your body instead of just thinking about the emotion. You are not just changing your thoughts. You are allowing your body to process and release what it has been holding. You are giving your nervous system permission to complete the stress cycle, to let go of the charge, to return to baseline. All of this is to say, The transformation you seek is not only possible, it is inevitable with consistent practice. This is not about trying harder or being stronger or magically becoming a different person. This is about understanding how your brain and body work and training them intentionally. This is about using the tools that science has validated, the practices that have been shown, again and again, to change brain structure, to expand your window of tolerance, to reduce reactivity and increase regulation. Every time you pause, you are rewiring your brain. Every time you breathe slowly, you are training your nervous system. Every time you name your emotion, you are strengthening your prefrontal cortex. Every time you move your body, you are discharging stress. Every time you connect safely, you are expanding your capacity. This is not magic. This is biology. And biology responds to consistent practice, not overnight, not without effort, but absolutely, reliably, inevitably. The pathways change, the window widens, the reactivity softens, the sovereignty deepens. You are not hoping for change. You are building it, neuron by neuron, breath by breath, choice by choice. And the science confirms what you are beginning to feel. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are not beyond help. You are a biological system that is capable of learning, adapting, and transforming. And every moment you practice, you prove it. The doubt may still show up. The old patterns may still pull. But now you know. This is not permanent. This is not who you are. This is just the trail you have walked most often. And you are building a new one. With every pause, every breath, every conscious choice, you are carving a new path. And eventually, that path becomes the one you walk without thinking. That path becomes your new default. That path becomes who you are. This is the science. This is the validation. This is the evidence that what you are doing works. Not because someone said so, but because the brain is plastic, the nervous system is trainable, and you are doing the work that changes both. Trust the process. Trust the biology. Trust yourself. The transformation is already happening. But knowledge without application is just information. Understanding the science does not save you when the moment arrives, when the stakes are high, when the emotions are overwhelming, when the old patterns scream the loudest. This is where mastery is truly tested. Not in calm moments when you have space to breathe and think, but in the crucible of real life, in conflict, in failure, in chronic stress, in the moments when everything in you wants to react and every tool you have learned feels distant and impossible to access. This is where the practice either holds or collapses. This is where you discover whether the work you have done has actually changed you, or whether it was just theory. And the truth is, you will stumble. You will react. You will lose access to the pause. You will find yourself back in old patterns you thought you had outgrown. This is not failure. This is part of the process. Because mastery is not measured by never falling. It is measured by how quickly you rise. Let us start with conflict, the argument. The moment when someone says something that hits you wrong and everything in you wants to defend, to attack, to win. You feel the heat rising, your chest tightens, your mind races with all the reasons you are right and they are wrong. The words are already forming, sharp and ready. You want to make them understand. You want to prove your point. You want to hurt them the way they just hurt you. This is the moment. This is where the pause becomes sacred, because in this moment, every instinct you have is pulling you toward escalation, toward saying the thing that cannot be unsaid, toward breaking something that will be hard to repair. And the pause is the only thing standing between you and that outcome. You feel the heat, you notice the tightness, you catch the impulse forming, and instead of obeying it, you stop. You do not speak, you do not act, you just breathe. One slow inhale, one long exhale. You label what is happening. I am feeling defensive. I am feeling attacked. You feel the sensation in your body, the tension in your jaw, the fire in your chest. You do not follow the story. You do not rehearse your rebuttal. You just feel it and breathe through it. And in those few seconds, something shifts. The urgency softens. The need to win loosens. You can see that this person is not your enemy, that this moment does not have to be a war, that you have a choice. You can respond instead of react. You can ask a question instead of making an accusation. You can listen instead of defending. You can soften instead of hardening. This does not mean you do not feel the anger. You do. It is still there. But now you are holding it instead of being held by it. Now you can choose repair over revenge, connection over winning. And when you make that choice, the conflict transforms. It does not disappear, but it stops being destructive. It becomes a conversation. Difficult, yes. Uncomfortable, absolutely. But no longer a battle. No longer a wound. Now consider failure, the project that collapses despite your best effort, the rejection that stings, the mistake that exposes you in front of people whose opinions matter. The shame crashes over you instantly. Your stomach drops, your face burns, your mind floods with thoughts. I am not good enough. I never will be. Everyone sees it now. I should not have tried. This is the moment when the old pattern would take over. You would spiral. You would collapse inward. You would replay the failure over and over, each time deepening the wound, each time reinforcing the story that you are inadequate. You would shut down, withdraw, maybe give up entirely. Because if this is who you are, someone who fails, someone who is not enough, then why keep trying? But now you have a different option. You feel the shame. You notice the heat in your face, the tightness in your throat, the heaviness in your chest, and you label it. I am noticing shame. I am feeling embarrassed. You breathe. You drop into the sensation instead of the story. You feel the knot in your stomach, the burning in your cheeks, but you do not believe the narrative. You do not let the emotion define you. You recognize that shame is a feeling, not a fact. That this moment of failure is data, not destiny. That you can feel the disappointment fully and still see what there is to learn. You can acknowledge the mistake without collapsing into self-hatred. You can sit with the discomfort without letting it convince you that you should stop trying. And from that place, you can metabolize the failure. You can extract the lesson. You can adjust your approach. You can reach out for support instead of hiding. You can begin again, not because the shame is gone, but because you are no longer controlled by it. You are holding it. You are letting it exist without letting it decide what you do next. Now imagine chronic stress, not a single moment of intensity, but a season of it. Loss, illness, financial strain, uncertainty that stretches on for weeks or months. Everything feels like too much. You are depleted. Your window of tolerance has narrowed. Things that would normally be manageable feel overwhelming. You are more reactive, more fragile, more prone to collapse or explosion, and maintaining your practice feels impossible. You do not have the energy. You do not have the space. The tools that worked before feel out of reach. This is when The practice matters most, not because you will do it perfectly. You will not. But because even doing it imperfectly becomes an anchor. Even pausing once when you would have reacted 10 times is progress. Even catching yourself halfway through a reaction instead of after it is over is growth. Even noticing that you are depleted and giving yourself permission to rest instead of pushing through is sovereignty. Under chronic stress, the goal is not mastery. The goal is survival with integrity. The goal is not reacting less than you ever have. It is reacting less than you would have before you had these tools. It is lowering your expectations without abandoning your practice. It is being gentle with yourself while still showing up. It is recognizing that this is hard, that you are doing your best, and that your best right now looks different than it did when you were resourced. You will lose the pause. You will react. You will say things you regret. You will collapse when you wish you had stayed steady. And when that happens, the practice shifts. Now it is not about preventing the reaction. It is about recovering from it. Quickly, without shame, without spiraling into self-judgment that makes everything worse. This is the art of recovery. When you react, when you snap or shut down or spiral, you notice it as soon as you can. You do not wait. You do not stew in guilt. You acknowledge it. I just reacted. I lost the pause. I said something I did not mean. You feel the regret without collapsing into it. You breathe, you ground, and then you repair. If you hurt someone, you apologize, not defensively, not with excuses, just clearly and honestly. I am sorry. I reacted instead of responding. That was not okay. I am working on this, and I will keep working on it. You do not make it about your shame. You do not ask them to comfort you or reassure you. You take responsibility. You repair the rupture, and then you let it go. If you spiraled internally, if you collapsed into fear or shame or self-doubt, you do the same thing. You acknowledge it. You do not judge yourself for it. You do not add shame on top of the original emotion. You just notice. I spiraled. I lost perspective. I let the story take over. And then you come back. You ground in your body. You reconnect to the present. You remind yourself of what is actually true instead of what fear told you. Recovery is a skill, and it is just as important as prevention. Because you will react. You are human. You will have moments when the tools are not accessible, when the emotion is too strong, when the old patterns take over. And in those moments, what matters is not that you fell. It is how quickly you rise, how quickly you return to center, how quickly you repair and begin again. This is mastery under pressure, not perfection, not never reacting, but recovering quickly, apologizing without collapsing, beginning again without shame, maintaining the practice even when it is imperfect, showing up even when you are depleted, pausing even once when you would have reacted a dozen times. Because under pressure, you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to the level of your training. This is not pessimism. This is reality. When the stakes are high and the emotions are intense, you do not suddenly become more capable than you have ever been. You revert to what is most practiced, to what is most familiar, to what your nervous system knows by heart. This is why the practice matters. This is why you pause on the easy days, in the small moments when the stakes are low. Because you are training your nervous system. You are carving the pathway. You are teaching your body what to do when pressure arrives. And the more you practice in calm, the more accessible the tools become in chaos. You are building a reservoir of regulation, a foundation of awareness, a reflex of pause instead of reaction, so that when life gets hard, and it will, you have something to fall back on. Not perfection, not immunity to reactivity, but a practice, a tool, a way back to center that you have walked so many times that even in the dark, even when you are exhausted, even when everything is falling apart, you can still find it. This is what it means to be sovereign under pressure, not to never struggle, not to never react, but to recover, to repair, to return, to keep showing up even when you stumble, to trust that the practice holds even when you do not, to know that every moment is a new chance to pause, to breathe, to choose, and that no matter how many times you fall, you can always rise again. Mastery is not a destination. It is a practice, and the practice doesn't end when life gets hard. That is when it matters most. That is when it saves you. That is when you discover that all the work you did in the easy moments has prepared you for this. And even if you stumble, even if you fall, you know how to come back. You know how to rise. And that is enough. And now, here you are, at the end of this journey and the beginning of another. Because something has shifted, something fundamental. You can feel it even if you cannot fully name it yet. You are not the same person who started this process. The change is not dramatic. It is not a single moment of transformation. It is quieter than that, deeper than that. It is the accumulation of 1,000 small choices, 1,000 pauses, 1,000 moments where you chose awareness over autopilot, response over reaction, sovereignty over surrender. You no longer try to control your reactions. You simply do. The pause is no longer something you have to remind yourself to take. It is no longer effortful or deliberate in the way it once was. It has become natural, instinctive, a reflex that lives in your body, not just your mind. When the heat rises, you notice it. When the tightness forms, you feel it. And without thinking, without forcing, you pause, you breathe, you create space. Not because you are trying to be good or disciplined or perfect, but because this is who you are now. This is how you move through the world. You are no longer ambushed by emotion. Fear still shows up. Anger still rises. Shame still whispers. But they do not overtake you the way they used to. You see them coming. You recognize them. And instead of bracing or resisting or collapsing, you meet them with curiosity, with grace, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they can handle whatever arises. You are not afraid of your feelings anymore. You trust yourself to hold them, to feel them fully, and to choose what to do with them. This is the shift, the transformation that happens not all at once, but slowly, steadily, until one day you realize you are no longer who you were. You are no longer someone who is controlled by your emotions. You are someone who holds space for them. You are no longer someone who fears the intensity of your inner world. You are someone who can sit with discomfort, with uncertainty, with pain, and not be consumed by it. You are no longer reactive. You are responsive. And that distinction is everything. The identity shift is subtle but profound. You used to believe that your emotions were you, that when anger showed up, you were angry, that when fear showed up, you were afraid, that when shame showed up, you were inadequate. The emotion and the self were fused, inseparable, and because of that fusion, you had no choice. You did what the emotion demanded. You said what it told you to say. You acted from it, not with it. But now you know the truth. You are not your emotions. You are the space in which emotions occur. You are the awareness that notices them. You are the presence that holds them without being overtaken by them. This is not detachment. This is not coldness. This is sovereignty. You feel everything, but you are not ruled by anything. You can be angry and still speak with respect. You can be afraid and still take action. You can be hurt and still stay open. You are no longer at the mercy of your internal weather. You are the sky that holds it all, and this internal transformation radiates outward. It changes everything. Your relationships deepen because you are no longer reactive. When someone says something that would have triggered you before, you pause, you listen, you ask questions instead of making accusations, you soften instead of hardening, you repair instead of defending. People feel safer with you. They trust you. They know they can bring difficult things to you without you exploding or shutting down. They know you can handle intensity without making it about you. And because of that, intimacy becomes possible in ways it never was before. Your opportunities expand because fear no longer decides for you. You still feel the anxiety before the risk. You still feel the doubt before the leap. But now, instead of letting those feelings stop you, you carry them with you. You acknowledge the fear and you move forward anyway. You speak up in the meeting. You apply for the position. You share your work. You take the chance. And slowly, over time, your life expands. Not because you stopped feeling fear, but because you stopped obeying it. Peace becomes your baseline, not because life becomes easier, not because the triggers disappear, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer fighting your emotions, resisting your feelings, judging yourself for being human. You have made peace with the fact that you will feel things, difficult things, uncomfortable things, painful things, and that feeling them doesn't make you weak or broken. It makes you alive. And from that place of acceptance, peace arises, not as the absence of difficulty, but as the presence of inner stability. You are grounded, centered, steady. Even when the storm rages around you, there is a calm at your core. The world has not changed. The same triggers exist, the same difficult people, the same stresses and uncertainties and disappointments. Life is still hard. But you are no longer the same person encountering it. You have changed. And because you have changed, everything else changes with you. The email that would have sent you spiraling still arrives. But now you read it, feel the reaction rising, pause, and respond with clarity instead of panic. The comment that would have triggered defensiveness still comes, but now you hear it. Notice the heat forming. Breathe, and choose curiosity instead of combat. The opportunity that would have paralyzed you with fear still appears, but now you feel the anxiety. Acknowledge it, and step forward anyway. The circumstances are the same. But you are different, and that makes all the difference. You have become sovereign. Not in the sense of never struggling, not in the sense of never feeling, but in the sense of being able to hold whatever arises without being overtaken by it. You trust yourself now. You trust that no matter what emotion shows up, no matter how intense, no matter how unexpected, you can handle it. You can feel it, name it, breathe through it, and choose what comes next. You are no longer afraid of yourself. You are no longer afraid of your inner world. You are at home in your own skin. This is freedom. Not freedom from emotion, but freedom within it. Not the absence of reactivity, but the presence of choice. Not perfection, but sovereignty. You are no longer controlled. You are no longer a passenger. You are the author of your experience, the architect of your responses, the one who decides, in every moment, who you want to be and how you want to show up. And this is not the end. This is the beginning. Because mastery is not a destination. It is a practice without a finish line. There will be moments when you lose the pause, when the old patterns resurface, when you react instead of respond. That is not failure. That is being human. And every moment offers a new chance to return, to begin again, to choose awareness over autopilot, to choose sovereignty over surrender. The gap between stimulus and response is where your power lives. It is the space where freedom exists. It is the moment where you become who you truly are instead of who your conditioning told you to be. And now, you know how to live there. You know how to find that gap, widen it, and inhabit it. You know how to pause, breathe, and choose. You know how to feel everything, and still respond wisely. This is who you are now. Not someone who tries to control their reactions. Someone who does. Not someone who hopes to change. Someone who has. Not someone who is working toward sovereignty. Someone who embodies it. You are no longer reactive. You are responsive. You are no longer controlled. You are free. And as you move forward, you will continue to deepen. The practice will continue to evolve. The awareness will continue to expand. The pause will continue to widen. You will discover new layers, new challenges, new edges where growth is possible. And every time you meet those edges, you will have the tools. You will have the awareness. You will have the practice that has carried you this far. You are not done. You will never be done. But you are transformed. And that transformation is permanent. Not because you will never struggle again, but because you now know how to navigate struggle. You know how to return to center. You know how to rise after you fall. You know how to hold emotion without being held by it. The world will continue to challenge you. Life will continue to bring difficulty. But you are no longer the person who is overwhelmed by it. You are the person who meets it with presence, with grace, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they can handle whatever comes. You are the calm at the center of the storm. Not because the storm has stopped, but because you have learned to stand steady while it rages. This is the transformation. This is the promise fulfilled. You are no longer ambushed by your emotions. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer reactive. You are sovereign. You are responsive. You are free. And now, every moment is an opportunity. Every trigger is a chance to practice. Every emotion is a teacher. Every reaction is a reminder that you have a choice. And you will keep choosing, again and again, in small moments and big ones. In calm and in chaos, you will keep choosing awareness. You will keep choosing the pause. You will keep choosing sovereignty. Because you are no longer trying to become someone who can do this. You are someone who does. This is who you are now, and nothing can take that away from you. The gap between stimulus and response is yours. The power to choose is yours. The freedom to respond instead of react is yours. You are transformed. You are sovereign. You are free. And this is only the beginning.